Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Video Mail for the week of April 23rd, 2012. Welcome to the site to all you new members and welcome back to the old members. The Ask Video Mail, don't forget, is your chance to get your question in character animation or performance answered in a video just like this one, but I need your question if I'm going to answer it, so please send me your questions to webmaster@kennyroy.com. I go through all the questions and I answer the ones that I think will help the most people. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And you can even send me your Maya file if you're having a problem. I love to see Maya files. Thank you for all those who have sent me a Maya file. It really helps out a lot. If you are on a trial or you are just haven't sent a question in, it's the best way to take the most value out of your subscription here at KennyRoy.com. So I encourage you to try it. Just send something in. Who cares? Who cares? Okay. Speaking of getting value, the rewards, I've announced that on the Kickstarter page for the little painter that I have begun to organize the videos to send out to all of those who pledged and help me get past those pledge milestones. We did amazing in the last 2 hours, and I ended up giving out 2 extra videos to everyone who pledged on the Kickstarter page. So check that out. If you are a backer of the little painter, go to the Kickstarter page. If you haven't already, there's 508 backers, and I've only received about 100 emails for the video rewards. So go check that out, the little painter Kickstarter, if you haven't already. And if you have, thank you. Just be patient. It'll take me about a week to get all those videos ready because it's going to be terabytes and terabytes of transfers. I just got to get it all organized, right? So cool, that's about it on that stuff. And let's get to the question right away. It's an interesting one. Let's see. That is a very, very good question. I'm glad you asked it. Basically, what we have here is a image. Let's just take a look. Basically, here's Stewie, a rig from Animation Mentor. You have a spine control, you have a pelvis control, and then a body control. And what this animator did is rotate the body backwards, rotate the pelvis down, and then rotate the spine down. And he basically realized that you get basically this result, which is almost as if nothing ever happened. Okay, so let me do that. Just make sure that I'm getting the same result that you are. Rotate the body up, rotate the pelvis down, and then rotate the spine down. Okay, so I'm getting basically the same result that you are. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set a key on frame 2 with this, and then on frame 1, I'm going to 0 it, okay? And just double check that that's what we're getting. Okay, trying as much as I can to make sure that everything is like almost exactly the same. Okay, yeah, so ostensibly you could get this absolutely perfectly back in line with each other. Now this is a good chance for me to talk about counter animating. If you haven't seen the how to properly test a rig lecture, it is in the store. If you're a Kickstarter backer, maybe that should be one of the ones that you choose for your video reward. Everyone gets 2 videos, and people who pledge $75 or more get 2 extra videos. So ostensibly you could get 4 videos. I'm using ostensibly a lot. I'm going to use a different word. Presumably you could get 4 videos from the store, and maybe this should be one of them if you are interested in what I have to say here. So when you are testing your rig, one of the most important things is to see what the pivot point is of that control. Because what would happen, or what can happen, is that you get a false sense of the poses that you can move your character into when the pivots are not right. Okay? So on some of the rigs that we use for like our sci-fi channel show, just because the creatures are so oddly shaped, we need to put the controller in a place where it's easy to grab it. And sometimes that means that the pivot point is not centered visually on the controller. That's what's happening here. And it's kind of 6 1/2 dozen, meaning you kind of get two different results, different, maybe not one is bad and one is good, but different results. And what's happening here is the body's pivot point. If you hold down D, you get to see where a pivot is, and you can kind of visually see it. Or if, well, it looks like translate is oh, there it is. Also, the translate shows the pivot point as well as D. Okay, but sometimes if a translate is locked, it'll be gray and kind of hard to see. D will always show it to you, no matter what. And on every single move, rotate, and scale. See, here's a scale that's grayed out because scale is not activated, it's locked, and if I hit D, there it is again. Okay, so visually, this pivot is not on the body's controls center. Okay, so you're not actually getting the character hinging from the hips. It used to be like that. Stewie used to be able to hinge from his hips, and humans can. And so well, I was pretty sure that this was the way it was, so I went back into an older version of the file. Of course, it's going to error on me. And then here, that's not the right one. Here's the old Stewie. This is a very old Stewie. This guy is about 2 or 3 years old. Okay, so so here he is, and as you can see, the controls are different. The pelvis has the same pivot point as it does on the new one, but the hips actually have a pivot that is the body actually hinges on the hips. And what's nice about that is that you actually get a bend over in the legs from the character. Okay? Whereas with this new one, you actually get him rotating around the same pivot point as the spine and the pelvis. Which is why you can actually counter animate it perfectly in place. I actually prefer the old one to the new one because I like to know that I'm getting different movement out of every single one of my controls. Okay, so this one, it's impossible to get that same pose in place. You're much more obviously badly counter animating this one, especially considering that there's no translation controls on the hips or spine, and there are with this guy. You're much more. You have to be much more disciplined with your counter animation to make sure that you don't get into any trouble with the old one. Now, squash and stretch is super awesome, and yeah, actually, you know what? I probably prefer the new Stewie far more to the old. Just for that reason, that has a squash and stretch spine. But I would probably say that if you are daring and adventurous, that you would want to move the pivot of the body back down to where it was on him so that you can get actual bend at, hinging at the hips. Because this is a movement that humans can do. We can bend over, we can keep our legs straight. In fact, let me try to get it a little bit more. Problem is that the IK, no, too far forward. Anyway, it's a balancing act, trying to figure out where it goes. But I like to get very distinct movement out of every one of my controllers. So if I was you, I would probably save a version of my rig with this pivot point just drag down to where it's affecting the body hinging on the hips, and then you're just positive you're getting unique motion out of each one of your controls. This one still works as expected, still swings the hips, and that's kind of nice. It's good to have like that one joint that's kind of rerouted. so that you can get that side-to-side motion, because it's really nice when the character comes down and takes a step and like lands on this right side to just pop that hip up a little bit. It's nice to not have to counter-animate the hips against the motion, like the up and down motion of the root right here, or the body. Sometimes it's called root, sometimes it's called body, sometimes it's called master. Their master control, animation mentor likes to call layout. It's all, you gotta be careful. Okay, so, and then if I go back and forth, you can see that I'm actually getting the same result as I was with this old rig, bending him backwards. So really kind of to answer the question as it was asked, the way to handle these is to use them for the motion that you want, and not try to build a pose using all of these just like kind of in concert together. Because if you want like the hips up, maybe you'll go like this, right? And then you'll try to fix it with the spine, counter animate the spine back, okay, and then I'll move the spine to try to get it back in shape, like over here. And now I'm starting to get into a lot of trouble. If I want the hips up here, this big hip motion, my gosh, what a mess, right? Because it's all super counter animated, right? Counterposed. So my advice to you is to think more about motion early on, so that what you're using is the control that is meant to create the motion you want, and not just the pose. Meaning, if I have him lean over on a desk, normally humans kind of bend the spine, so I'm going to have him bend over like this, and maybe counterpose that last one right here, terrible posture, and maybe be leaning up. I'm in FK right now. Let's see. Don't really know how. Here we go. Have him leaning, leaning on the desk, with his elbow. Anyway, down on the desk, something like this, head in his hand, right? So I know that I'm going to use the spine to make that pose. If I want him to step back and pick up something off the ground, well, I'm going to use this controller to step him back, and then this one again to lean him over, to rotate him over, because humans, we bend from the hips when we pick something up. You see that? So I'm using the control that's meant for the motion that I want, not necessarily using them all at the exact same time to get some like crazy pose instead. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And then same thing, you got to be careful. I just saw that the IK actually leaves the rotation on the FK on the hand, and here you have another control where they're both completely counter animated. So if I zero this one right now, rotations 0, look at that, I still have rotations on this hand. Okay, so that's another thing to be aware of. You may find yourself getting into a really bad gimbal situation with the rotations on the hand if you're using IK. Then when you switch to FK, if it's not zero, if the IK is not zeroed, then you're going to be having these crazy gimbals happening on the FK as well. Why? Because you have to just like pose it. Look, it's 177 degrees. That's not good. We don't like to be near 180 on anything. And then just look at these axes. I'm not sure even like what I'm looking at right here, because if you look, the Z is lined up with the X. Basically, it's 90 degree to the X, but the Y and X right now, look at them. The Y and the X, that's not even 90 degrees. Isn't that a little crazy? See that slope right there? So that's all going to be huge problems down the road. Huge problems down the road. Okay? So, let's see here. Just seeing if there's any weird scales or transforms. There was a rotation above that control, but that shouldn't really screw things up too much, as long as you're not rotating the parent. So anyway, yeah, this is the old one. I prefer my controls to do something different than the others. So I would probably move the pivot on your Stewie if I were you, and then it should be clear that you use this one to bend the entire body on full body motions, thinking about motions instead of just poses, really, like using all of these, you know, using the hips and the body and the low spine to like get the pixels lining up. Think more about the movement that's going to happen, okay? It's a very good question. And I encourage you guys to think about checking out that rig testing lecture that's in the store. If you're a Kickstarter backer, you can pick it up for free. So think about that and let me know. And thank you for supporting the Kickstarter. And I'm happy to give you the videos. You guys more than blew away the funding goals. So they're all yours. Okay. Thanks for sending in this question. Please send me in more questions and your Maya files to webmaster@kennyroy.com. I enjoy doing these. I hope you enjoy watching them. Keep kicking butt on your animation, and as always, rock on.